It's time to relive great moments with former Cowboys.
Eddie, something one of the all-time great.
You know, that's one of the great things in having the opportunity to coach here at Oklahoma State was the fact that you had such great people.
It's time for Where Are They Now on Triple Play Sports Radio.
John Farrell, former Cowboy pitcher back in the early 80s.
And, you know, mostly putting up to me, I guess, after, chasing everybody around, chasing us around the country.
Where Are They Now? Our weekly talk with former Oklahoma State athletic coaches, players, and personnel.
Desmond Mason, former All-American player here at Oklahoma State.
So today, that's what I spend most of my days doing. For the most part is, in the studio trying to paint and trying to create, and I enjoy doing that.
It's like catching up with an old friend every Wednesday.
Boy, do I feel old today, as I always do on a Wednesday when we bring back some of these former athletes. We're talking with Houston.
Sure did. Had a great time. That was of course, my mom and dad went to school there. My brother, Dickie, as you mentioned, went to school there. And, of course, we both met our wives right there in Stillwater, Oklahoma.
Now your host, ready to take a stroll down memory lane, here is Tom Dirato.
Well, thank you once again, and welcome to Where Are They Now? And as we've been promising here for the last hour or so, Wren Baker, good friend. He's Vice President, Director of Athletics at University of North Texas down there in Denton, Oklahoma, the Mean Green. And so happy to have him on because we got a lot of questions and see where they stand with the Mean Green and how they're handling some of these major problems and challenges for college athletics. But before we get into that, how about getting to the real stuff? How's the Baker clan doing right now?
Well, they're doing great. My wife is homeschooling the two girls like many parents across the country, and we've cut some of our entertainment expenses, but my wife's wine bill has not went down at all. This homeschooling about 5:30. We've got to ease some tension around the house.
I think it has to do with you wearing out your welcome at home, I think.
There's no question. She's reminded me a couple of times that they do just fine around there when I'm not there. So
yeah.
So I mean, But you know what? We're blessed. We're all healthy. We're together, and I've gotten to spend more time with my kids in the last month and a half than I normally probably do in a year, and I won't pretend that that's been all rosy every day, but it has been a great opportunity for me to bond with them, spend more time together, do different projects and things with them. So, I'm grateful for that opportunity.
Coming up, I think, in almost 4 years now in your position there at University of North Texas, unless I missed a year, but I think it's coming up on 4, isn't it, somewhere in that area?
That's correct, yeah. July of 2016, I was named, and then I started the first week of August of 2016. So we're motoring towards the conclusion of year 4.
Let me ask you this, Wren, and we always talk around here, obviously the focus on Oklahoma State and a lot of the challenges that are there for this department right now with the virus having taken this away and that away. But, despite the fact that you're not a Power 5 team, you have the same challenges and the same hurdles to jump over as any AD in a Power 5 school.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably up to this point, it's been a more significant budget challenge for non-autonomy schools just because, we have smaller budgets. And so that NCAA tournament hit, our share of that ended up being about a $900,000 revenue shortfall. Well, that's certainly a bigger portion of my budget than what Oklahoma State's percentage is from that distribution. So, we've had to get creative and do some things and learn how to be efficient and good stewards of the resources that we do have. But we've closed this budget year and we're balanced. So far we haven't had to do any reduction in our scholarship budgets or reduction in our to any of our employees, and that's kind of the approach that we've taken. Hey, we may have to get to a place where we have to pull levers, but those will be the last levers that we want to pull. And so we've been able to finish out this fiscal year and turn our attention to building our budget for next fiscal year, and that's challenging because there's so many unknowns. But I just in life you have to look at things as an optimist or a pessimist, and I just take the approach that we're going to look at this optimistically, and we're going to have to make some decisions that are tough, and we're going to have some challenging times, and it's not going to be fun or easy, but we're going to come out of this more efficient. We're going to come out of this wiser, and we're going to come out of this prepared to continue to get better and compete. We've had a lot of momentum here, and so I'm committed to doing whatever we got to do to keep that momentum.
In popular topics of conversation in and around here, and I'm sure, certainly around the Big 12, that's kind of our backyard here that we look at, but has to do with what? Number one, football. Will it be played? Will it not be played? If it's not played, what's going to happen? And two, of course, the cutbacks, the scholarship reductions, and what are you going to do with all the people that are coming back or will take advantage of coming back that the NCAA said could come back at a spring sports? How do you pay for that?
Yeah, in terms of the calendar and the schedule, anybody who registers an opinion on when they think we'll be back is certainly guessing, because I think there's a lot of unknowns, although I suspect in the next few days we're going to get some kind of direction from the NCAA. The White House released, opened a website I think a few days ago, and it has some guidelines, and I think the NCAA is taking those and building on them to put together a plan for college sports. But, I think we'll have a fall sports season, and certainly football is part of that. I don't really know today if it'll start on time. I tend to think that we would delay it before we would truncate it or shorten it. All of the TV contracts and revenue is built off of a full slate of games. And so you start to try and unwind that, it gets to be real complicated. And so to me, it makes more sense to probably look at an alternate timeline than it would be to shorten the season. But that's just my opinion. I don't have any necessarily strong insight into that. But, I just feel as the testing becomes more available, at some point, and this is so much bigger than sports, but at some point, we got to find a way to get back to normal, even if normal is a little bit different than it used to be. And so, and that's not, again, I want to emphasize that, sports is not the most important thing here. It's not even the most important thing in regards to campuses. But there's so many great experiences, life-changing experiences, development experiences for young people on college campuses. They get in leadership positions, they build lifelong friendships, and internships and group projects and all of those things. We got to find a way to start to plan a transition back, and I think all of us in college athletics understand that transition plan has to focus and center around making sure that we're ensuring the safety of our players and the safety of coaches and staff and the safety of fans. And so that's going to be at the forefront. But as testing becomes more readily available, I just am of the belief that we've got a lot of really smart people working on this, a lot of resources being poured into it. I think we're going to be able to see that plan be developed and rolled out. Now, again,
it's all comparative, but you talk about your football schedule. You've got a date with A&M, which I'm guessing will be a pretty good payday, I would think. But as you look around, your TV partners, if you will, and there are several of them. That's just not to take away from what money you get off of TV, but it's not like the TV contract that they have in the Big 12 where you couldn't work around that number.
That's correct. I think there's around 20 schools in the country that are truly self-sustaining. So that means they generate enough. They generate more in revenues than they do in expenses. Even a majority of the Power 5 institutions get some sort of money from campus. That may be direct from the campus E&G budget, or it could be through student fees. But you get outside of the autonomy conferences, and And the TV money is so different that the subsidy money is greater. And so, for schools like the Big 12, where their TV revenues are, I believe, in excess of $40 million now total, and that doesn't count other football-related revenues. I would imagine Oklahoma State's probably $60 million or more in football-related revenues.
Yes.
So three-fourths of their budget, is tied to if we don't play football. Whereas my $40 million budget breaks down pretty evenly into thirds. A third from our student fees. Now they get to get in free, so we don't collect ticket revenue from them like they do at Oklahoma State, but a third from campus and a third that's self-generated. Of that self-generated, my TV revenue portion is only about $500,000. So the loss of a football season certainly is different for me than what it would be for an autonomy conference school. I'm dependent on those revenues for sure. I mean, the total revenues we take in from football is probably, in excess of $5 million, but it's a different value proposition and revenue lost than what the Power 5 conferences with those large TV contracts would see.
If you'll sit with us just for a little bit, we've got to take a break, do some business. When we come back, though, I want to get back to the subject of the NCAA ruling about spring sports, and those players could come back and have another year at your school and schools around the country. We'll do that after this. Well, welcome back to Where Are They Now? Tom Dirato with you, and my guest, good friend, has been for a number of years, Wren Baker, who's the Vice President, Director of Athletics at the University of North Texas, over there in Denton, Texas, and the pride of McCurtain County, I might add, Wren Baker. He made me say that. But, being from Valiant and Bochita, hey, that they still remember you kindly back in those days, don't they? I think.
Well, probably some people do. Probably the teachers and the administrators that had me as a student may remember that a little differently, but I still get back home occasionally, not as much as I used to. My grandmother passed away a couple of years ago, and I would get there to check on her a lot, but definitely am still follow everything there, and it's a great place. A lot of people from Dallas-Fort Worth go to Broken Bow Lake to vacation or to that area. So they know no one knows where Valiant is, but when I tell them it's 20 minutes from Broken Bow, then everybody knows where it is. So that helps. Baker,
I can attest that you were there because we stopped one time on the way to Ida Belt just to see if you were in the building, and they said, "Oh yeah, we know where Mr. Baker is. Here's his office right here," and you were there on the job.
I mean, I was trying to keep middle school kids from tearing the place down, so that was quite the experience.
Hey, let me ask you on a serious note. Now we're going back to the question I was going to ask you before the break. The NCAA gave spring sports the opportunity to come back because their sports were taken away from them there at the end, and a lot of ADs have said, this is good, but how are we going to, give these guys and gals the scholarships that they had before, and now you add the people coming in with recruiting classes? Is that a challenge there at the University of North Texas?
It is. I was for the legislation. I generally feel like if given the opportunities to grant opportunities for student athletes, that we should do that. And it was permissive legislation. You're not required to do it, although certainly you feel some pressure and to do that. Had everybody in North Texas want to take advantage of it, our bill would have been around $400,000. Now we don't have baseball, so that takes a big chunk out. But in reality, it's probably going to end up being about a third of that because a lot of student athletes. I mean, when you look at some of those sports, let's take track or softball. They're equivalency sports, so most of those kids are only getting a part of a scholarship. Most of them were kind of set to graduate. Maybe they were in grad school or they had a job or they had something lined up, and so a lot of them are not able to return. And but the ones that are able to return, that's real money. And when you're faced with a revenue shortfall that you don't know exactly what it's going to be, but it's going to be significant, and you're trying not to do any reduction in force or layoffs or furloughs or anything like that. It's all meaningful. But what we have found is that there's significant donor interest in that specific cost. That allows everybody's heartstrings were pulled at when seasons were canceled suddenly, and it allows them to specifically donate to a cause that they feel good about. And many of our donors are going through economic hardships during this time, but some of them are not. Some of them have actually done pretty well. I have one donor that makes hand sanitizer, so his revenues are through the roof. Mm-hmm. And so I think we'll be able to cover that bill with donor funds.
It's not a commuter school per se, but what's the percentage of students that actually live on campus versus the percentage that actually attend the school?
Yeah, we have about 40,000 students. I think there's 7 or 8 that live in dormitories on campus, but there's, I think, about 25,000 that are traditional college students that move to the Denton area, live within 5 minutes of campus. And so it's a much more traditional college feel than what I would have thought before having worked here. But we do have a healthy amount of commuters as well, especially in our graduate programs.
Name, image, and likeness. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I wouldn't give you anything for yours.
Well, that's true, but now we've got that taken care of. That would be the easiest decision you would ever have to make.
And just so everybody knows out here, I'm not the bad guy. Tom initiated this in our relationship, and I'm just getting retribution back for all of the shots he's taken at me. It's certainly a difficult topic to discuss. I'll say this: there's a narrative out there with many in the media that college athletes are being taken advantage of. And they're doing it so that coaches can make a lot of money. And listen, I agree that the amount of money that we pay coaches is kind of a tough optic to deal with. Now, nobody wants to talk about that when they're worried they're going to lose their coach. I get those phone calls and emails, back up the Brinks truck, whatever you got to do. And so, and we compensate a lot of our coaches very well at North Texas, not Big 12 well, but we compensate them well. But student athletes, by and large, get the best experience and the best living conditions of their life. Even at North Texas, where our budget's less than half Oklahoma State's, but we have full-time nutritionists, and they plan every meal. And, we have some of the best strength and conditioning coaches in the world, and the best sports medicine team in the world. When you really look at what college athletics puts into the growth and development of student athletes, we have an army of people in academics that make sure that our kids are matriculating to their degree program. And so when I go home at night and look in the mirror, there's no guilt that I feel that we're not doing a great job of helping young people grow. Forget athletically for a second, academically, socially, spiritually, all in all phases of their life, and helping them become better leaders and better people. And you've been around athletic programs, you've seen that, and you know that is the case. That being said, as times change, we have to look at things a little differently. And I 100% am against compensating student athletes for pay or in doing inducements that to allow them to recruit. I think the rules that prohibit that are in place for a reason. I think the college athletics amateurism model, despite what many people say, I think that's very important I think the fact that we require them to be students, that they need to be making progress towards a degree, is an important aspect of what we do. But we've probably reached a place where in this day and age, when you see all of the influencers and Instagram models and all of this stuff and how somebody can tweet something, and I mean, even YouTube kids. My kids are 8 and 5. I got 2 little girls, and they watch YouTube Kids all the time. If they see some kid on there playing with a toy, they immediately come wanting me to buy the toy. So there definitely is a value in that, and asking a student athlete to forego being able to monetize that probably is something that we need to reconsider. So there's still a lot of details to be fleshed out in what all this means, and I think the implementation of it is not going to be easy, and refining exactly what those rules are is not going to be easy. But I think it was the right thing to do, and I'll say I probably wasn't always there in that viewpoint. But the more that I really learned about it, studied it, listened to our student athletes, had conversations with them, I think it's the right thing to do, and we just need to make sure that it doesn't compromise the other principles that we hold so dear.
We'd be remiss if we didn't end this conversation here, Wren, with your feelings when you heard that Coach Sutton was finally inducted into the Hall of Fame. And as I mentioned before you came on, you spent a number of years here in the department, in the basketball operations office, GA. And I can't tell you how many times I used to hear, "Wren, what are you doing?" But what were your feelings?
I cried. I was by myself in my office when it come through, and I just kind of sat there and reflected on it a little bit. Grew emotional, but he's very deserving. Should have already been in, but at this point, again, you can be glass half empty or glass half full. I choose to just be thankful that even though he probably can't enjoy it like he would have a few years ago, he's alive. And I talked to Sean a couple of times, so I know that Coach understands that he got in, and I think that's great at this stage of his life that he knows that, and he taught me so much. And this, Coach was not the easiest person to work for. He kept his thumb on everybody. He kept you striving to be your best, and that didn't matter if you were his point guard or his lackey like I was. Whatever your job was, he was gonna push you to do it to the best of your ability. But after I left there, it's interesting when you're inside the program. He doesn't ever kind of let you get to a place where you know that he's proud of you or he's satisfied with the job you're doing. He kind of always keeps you striving to get his approval, but never quite giving it to you. But after I left there, he would call me often, check on my wife, check on my family. We've and would thank me for my contributions to the program, and I've talked to so many people that he did that to. And he is a Hall of Famer. He's very deserving. I learned so much from him about being a husband and father, and about being a leader. And it's a great day, for a great thing for Oklahoma State and the Sutton family. And I'm just grateful that I was able to work for him there and be a part of some special memories. Yeah, speaking of special memories, we'll wrap it up with this. That while you were here, and I'll give you all the credit, obviously, but we went to 4 NCAA tournaments, went to the Final Four in 2004, went to the Sweet 16 the next year. You saw some of the best of times here. I did. It was a dream come true. I grew up an Oklahoma State fan, specifically basketball. Randy Rutherford was on the 95 Final Four team, and when you're from small town Oklahoma, he was a rock star, and Randy and I got to be good friends when I was at Oklahoma State, and I'll leave you with this though. This is Coach Sutton for you. Whenever I got a chance to go back to Valley as principal and AD, I really wanted to stay in college athletics, but I was getting married. I needed to make more money. At that time, the job I had didn't pay hardly anything. Now you could make a decent living because the salaries have changed so much. But at that time, I was, trying to hold things together financially. And so had a chance to go back and make a lot more money as a public school administrator. And Coach said, "Why would you do that?" And I went in to tell him, I was like, "Coach, like, you know, it's back home. It's, you know, it's a good salary." And he was like, "But I think you belong in college athletics." And I said, "Well, Coach, I'd love to be in college athletics, but this is the opportunity that, you know, that God's brought me." And Coach said, "Sounds like you've made up your mind." And I said, "Well, I kind of have." And he said, "Well, this is the dumbest decision a smart guy's ever made." So he did not hesitate to give you an honest opinion. And when people ask me what he did better than anybody else, I tell them, hey, he was not afraid to define your role, consistently reinforce what your role was, and get you to strive to be the very, very best that you could be at the role that he needed you to be. And I'm just thankful that he pushed me and made me what I am today in many ways. And he was right. I did belong in college athletics, I guess, because it found me a year later, and I have never left it. And I wouldn't have those opportunities without Oklahoma State without him. Yeah,
I tend to think there's a little Eddie Sutton in everything that you do and have done on your climb all the way to University of North Texas. Hey, Wren, always pleasure to catch up with you. Best to your family. Hopefully everybody stays safe and can get through this together without any kind of anything going wrong. But we'll continue to monitor what's going on there at University of North Texas, and we're going to check in with you eventually again to see how things are going. But again, thanks for your time.
I appreciate it, TD, and you make sure and take care of that lovely bride of yours, and we'll catch up soon. Go Pope.
All right, bud. Appreciate you. Thanks a lot. That is it for Where Are They Now this week. Wren Baker joining us and kind of imparting a little bit of information from the other side, if you will.